Yeah, we'll talk about that. That investment, that's another bullet point on my list of questions for you. Before I jump into that, though, I want to talk about a political uh, wave that was coming well before the elections in the Biosecure Act, but that being certainly poised for, I would say, potential acceleration post-election. Um, I've had a number of conversations off the record with heads of CMC at clinical stage biotech companies who have told me that regardless of the outcome of the Biosecure Act, whether it passes or not, that the specter has been raised, and their stakeholders, their investors, their boards are profoundly concerned, deeply concerned about those companies' relationships with Chinese outsourcers. Now, post election, with Republicans, as I said, in full control of Congress, uh, do you see that legislation being enacted as a foregone conclusion? The Biosecure Act.
The Biosecure Act has certainly been, to your point, raising a lot of concerns, and the election certainly would seem to tilt the scales on how that may ultimately play itself out. With the Republicans in control, passage of legislation or some form of it seems likely, but a full decoupling from China remains improbable due to the complexities of global supply chains. For CMC heads, the act is already shifting discussions with stakeholders, even if it doesn't pass. The push for more secure supply chains is prompting companies to diversify with alternatives to Southeast Asia, India, and North America. The Biosecure Act could accelerate this trend by offering incentives to source domestically or from trusted countries. The legislation will likely target critical materials like APIs and essential medical supplies, which is phased with a phased shift away from China. A complete break, as I said, is unlikely, but companies should prepare by establishing contingency plans and alternative supplier relationships to stay ahead of an evolving compliance standards.
Yeah.
I would also say that I think some of this concern is a little misplaced, going back to what you're saying, we're in a global world, I don't know where the concept of doing good for humanity falls into that equation. But, it is the consequences of all these things do shift costs. And again, it's a theme that we're touching on, that it certainly doesn't help innovation. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. The concept that the Biosecure Act could accelerate something that we've all been, as an industry, in virtually every company in the space has been working on since the supply chain issues that we saw during COVID. The idea that the Biosecure Act could accelerate that progress, and it would be good progress towards more secure, robust onshore, nearshore supply chains, isn't lost on me. That idea is not lost on me. The thing that concerns me, I think, is just how quickly we can get there. Like, is the infrastructure anywhere near in place to make up that shortfall, even if a significant percentage? We don't. It's certainly not going to happen. Carte blanche across the board.
I think in terms of whatever timelines are imposed, I'm gonna go on a limb here and say that those are going to continue to be moved out.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of jawboning here. But I think in terms of to what you're calling out, the practicality of it all, I do think it'll move out. As somebody once told me years ago, if you can't jump over the bar, you lower it. So my sense is that that's what's going to ultimately play out in practice.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned the investment environment, and again, painting with a super broad brush. Traditionally, historically, I think it's safe to say, or fair to say, that Republican administrations have been associated with more favorable or agreeable conditions for M&A activity and business in general. I don't, I guess I haven't studied it too closely, specific to pharma and biopharma. But what do you see coming next year and beyond with this administration in terms of its, I guess, its receptivity to creating a more favorable M&A environment?
I think what you're touching on is completely accurate. Historically, Republican administrations have fostered conditions favorable for M&A activity, especially in sectors like healthcare, where pro-business policies can reduce regulatory friction. In contrast, current leadership, with the FTC under Lena Khan's oversight, has been pushing very aggressively against monopolistic practices and has actually created significant headwinds for M&A. And major deals like the Amgen Horizon merger face prolonged scrutiny, only to ultimately be approved. But it did put an overhang on M&A, and raised the spectrum of what could possibly be approved versus something that might get held up. So I think by no other changes, but by removing Lena Khan from the FTC, I think you're going to see a more favorable M&A environment. And I think when you factor that with the historical Republican practices that foster this, I do think that this will be very, very helpful. Looking ahead, this should the shift in leadership should signal a return to a more business-friendly approach, which would likely spur M&A, enabling companies to scale, innovate, and remain competitive. A robust M&A market is crucial not only as a capital market catalyst, but also as a fundamental ingredient for healthy, dynamic biopharma markets. While we may see less regulatory intervention, companies should still prepare for targeted antitrust concerns, particularly in healthcare, where large deals may face some scrutiny. But I do think that that things will loosen up, and I'm confident that we'll see more activity in that part of the market.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that would be welcome. That would be welcome coming out of a lengthy, protracted constriction in this space. I want to talk a little bit about the implications of, again, this is like broader scale, but the implications of Trump's promised tax cuts. This was a major part of his campaign. In order to cut taxes, across the board or to any degree, they're going to need to be, cuts. The position is they're going to need to create efficiencies and spend less in government. And in the first term, the first Trump administration, there was an attempt to make one of those cuts, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. That didn't happen. Do you think that the ACA is on the chopping block again, kind of in the context of the like I said, the general desire to create some savings somewhere to enable tax cuts that he's promised?
It's a fair question. And, certainly Trump has made noise, certainly during his first term, that was something that he wanted to reverse. But the ACA has proven rather resilient. And the pressure to cut spending on taxes could put it back on the table. But and from my perspective, I think full appeal remains unlikely, though I think there's a couple of reasons why that's the case. I wouldn't be surprised if it's tweaked a little bit, but I think for the most part, it's had a lot of popularity over time. Provisions like coverage for pre-existing conditions and Medicaid expansion have built strong public support, making a full repeal politically risky, in my opinion. Even with Republican control, I think consensus on a complete repeal is tough. But like I said, I do think that there's room for targeted reforms that can be made. And, given that Trump likes to kind of redefine everything as his, I wouldn't be surprised in his Trump-esque activities that he makes a few tweaks and then calls it Trumpcare.
Yeah.
I also think the fiscal restraints, while tax cuts may prompt budget cuts, outright appeal would disrupt coverage for millions of people, and we're more likely to see cuts to subsidies, limited Medicaid expansion, or more state control via block grants. In the end, administration may focus on incremental changes that align with conservative priorities, promoting private insurance, reducing regulations, and expanding health savings accounts while avoiding the political fallout of removing popular ACA benefits.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to shift gears back to RFK again. Long before his nomination, he had indicated that he wanted to play a part in a new Trump administration to work with him to, quote, ban pharmaceutical advertising on television. I don't want to overstate that influence, and frankly, I don't see that happening. But I'm curious about your take on whether there's a place for an RFK-esque prevention and health forward approach, and pharma's direct to consumer marketing. Is there a place or a world where you can see these two things peacefully coexisting in a constructive way?
I think it fits the pendulum analogy in terms of calibration. I think RFK Jr.'s push to ban DTC pharmaceutical ads marks a shift in healthcare policy, but I don't believe a full ban is likely due to pharma's strong backing and media support. What else are we going to watch during the football games? No, I'm kidding.
My mom, I always joke around. I hope my mom doesn't listen to this podcast. She, my mom's like 76 years old, and we have a like little inside running joke in our family where if she sees a pharmaceutical ad on television, she's suddenly afflicted by whatever indication that therapeutic is targeting. Like she's just learned about it for the first time on television, and suddenly she has restless leg syndrome.
No, that's very funny. I have a lot of empathy for that. Actually, in my earlier in my career, I was doing a project that was a hostile investor that was going after a company, and the company's product, one of their commercial product, was for restless leg. So I self-diagnosed myself and went on
Yeah, yeah. Well, so that's what that is. Yeah,
yeah. So I can see how that people do that. I think RFK's focus on prevention could reshape the conversation a little bit. The DTC advertising, while effective at raising awareness, including your mother, is often criticized for promoting costly drugs and influencing patient demand outside of clinical guidelines. RFK's prevention agenda and his focus on reducing chronic diseases through lifestyle changes, screenings, and community initiatives could complement pharma's efforts. And it's really consistent with patient engagement, as we've talked about, and much has been said. And, diabetes is the greatest, in my opinion, is the poster child for patient engagement. If you just manage your lifestyle, you'd reduce a lot of the risks, simply put. And I think there's a possible compromise ultimately to your question. Instead of a ban, I would expect potentially tighter regulations on DTC ads, ensuring a balanced view of the benefits and the risks, and more public health campaigns integrating prevention with farmers' message. I think that would also help farmers' bad boy image as well. If you're actually showing care for outcomes and prevention, as opposed to just kind of being that perceived as that dead drug pusher on the playground.
Yeah. I mean, RFK's got this reputation. I mean, he set it in stone when he was, I think when he was running in the primaries, he was out there on the campaign trail doing push-ups and, posing shirtless, the picture of fitness. I haven't read anything about this, but I wonder what his take on GLP-1s is, like where he stands on that.
No, that would be interesting. I don't recall him taking that particular issue on, but I do think his leadership offers a chance to bridge the gap between farmers' commercial goals and broader public health priorities, creating opportunities for coexistence. At least I'm trying to see a balance. I saw something recently where the FDA commissioner was talking about how he thought the FDA was working at a very high level, and he was very concerned at the pending changes. So, there's obviously different perspectives here. And,
Hmm.
I've often quipped that there's always three sides to everything, at least three sides to everything. So, I think, taking a fresh look at how we do business and how we conduct things through the lens of broader public health priorities is a healthy exercise. I'm not sure if people are embracing the messenger, but I
Yeah.
think certainly what the concept, uh, I think, has merit.